Hello, everyone. Today I'll be presenting how a social worker can help resolve macro level community conflicts, particularly focusing on the housing crisis. We'll use the Key Stakeholders video case study as the foundation and explore strategies a social worker can use to collaborate with different sectors and empower communities. In the video, we saw clear conflict among four key players: HUD, the community, the private sector, and the local government. Each stakeholder has valid concerns. HUD emphasized compliance. The community expressed frustration over gentrification and displacement. The private sector was focused on return on investment, and the local government was stuck in the middle. The conflict shows how systemic housing issues affects vulnerable populations and why a social worker's role is essential. So the social worker's role. As a social worker, I would serve as a bridge among stakeholders. This means facilitating honest dialogue to make sure the voices of residents aren't drowned out. I'd coordinate wraparound services for displaced families and advocate for tenant protections. I'd also educate the private sector on equitable development, help HUD understand the local impact of their policies, and work with local government to push for policy solutions. My goal would be to align stakeholders' priorities with community well-being. So, the nature of the conflict. This conflict is structural in nature. It's rooted in long-standing systems like economic equality, racial segregation, and policy barriers. It's not about a personal disagreement, it's about whose needs are prioritized in development. Structural conflicts require systemic change, and that's where social workers can lead with advocacy and coordination. So, the conflict resolution strategy would be empowering communities through collaboration. This would take a lot of communication. Um, it would take um, to build a therapeutic relationship with community members by way of feedback and data usage. Um, I would use a dual strategy of advocacy and mediation. Advocacy ensures that marginalized residents' concerns are heard and addressed. Mediation allows for me to bring stakeholders to the table, identify shared goals, and facilitate compromise. It's about combining empowerment and with practical negotiation. So that way, when decisions are made, they're informed. So the actionable steps. First, I would meet with each stakeholder group individually to understand their priorities and concerns. Then I bring everyone together for a structural mediation. We establish common ground, like reducing homelessness and improving safety. I emphasize transparent communication and work with legal aid, housing authorities, and nonprofit partners to explore solutions like community land trust or rent stabilization measures. The idea is to guide the group towards actionable, equitable resolutions. So, collaboration and empowerment are very important. In a housing crisis, vulnerable groups often lack the platform or power to influence policy changes. So, social workers kind of act as that motivational interviewer, so to speak, to empower and advocate for the community's rights. In this case, fair housing laws. Without advocacy, systemic issues may remain ignored. So, in a nutshell, collaboration is key. I partner with local nonprofits, housing advocates, and neighborhood coalitions. To me, empowering means involving residents in decision making, offering tenant rights, trainings, and giving them a seat at the table, pretty much so their voices can be heard. Balancing the advocate role with empowerment ensures we're not speaking for the community, but amplifying their voices and what is actually hitting home for them. So that way they have an opportunity to speak for themselves. This balance builds trust and promotes lasting change. Challenges. Some major challenges include stakeholder resistance, um, bureaucratic red tape, and competing priorities. There might be pushback from developers or political figures to uh, overcome, you know, the things that need to be overcome to facilitate change. I focus on relationship building, evidence based proposals, and transparency in the process. Being adaptable but firm in values is essential. Um, so my reasoning for my approach, my rationale. Um, Why it matters. All this matters because housing is foundational. Without stable housing, families can't thrive in education, employment, or health. Social workers like myself are uniquely positioned to bridge the gaps between systems and people, especially those historically left out of policy decisions, like groups that are marginalized. We bring empathy, strategy, and advocacy into a space that often lacks all three. This is how I can make the macro level change.